Ready to go? Hello from the United States. Thank you, Brian, for inviting me to review some wonderful memories of the history of the automatic identification industry. Being older than dirt, I guess I was a logical candidate to fulfill this project. So let's start with some, but not all, of the earlier milestones, primarily in the 1970s and 80s. There was a bit of activity in the 60s, but then things started moving briskly in the 1970s and early 80s with the release of many different codes and hardware devices. Several publications covering our industry started up, and the first major trade show took place. I would like to highlight two of the more interesting events that many do not know about. As you can see, the industry's history started more than 70 years ago when in 1949, Bernard Silver filed a patent for the bullseye code. In 1968, David Collins founded Computer Identics Corporation, the company that designed and manufactured the first laser barcode scanning system. While the theory of using bars to identify things had been known for some time, no scanning technology had previously been developed to make it practical. This early system proved to be highly unreliable. There are 2 points I would like to make about this slide. In 1989, the first and hopefully the last ScanQuake was held in San Jose, California. Actually, it was the 8th ScanTech, but we all experienced a nightmare. While there, a 7.2 earthquake struck fear into us all. More than 60 people were killed. Very unnerving, to say the least. Please note that on both slides, a number of milestones are preceded by an asterisk. The asterisks on these 2 history slides relate today the dates that standards were created and approved. Many more have followed. This is the most important point to understand. The bottom line of this relatively brief industry history is simple. A lot of widgets and gadgets had been developed over the years. Some were very good, and some were not so practical for widespread use. The basis for our very successful industry has come down to one simple thing: the establishment of industry standards. These have been the catalyst for progress, not only at the supplier level, but primarily at the user level. Nothing can be more supportive of this than the food industry. A big reason for this success can be attributed to the foresight of Dr. Albert Heijn. He had the vision to make his Dutch supermarket chain the most efficient of all. Before it became a standard, he absorbed the cost of marking every item in one of his stores with a UPC code. Then laser scanners were installed at the checkout, supported by computerized inventory control software, and the test began. The rest is history. As a result of this successful project, the grocery industry throughout a good part of the civilized world realized the fabulous return on investment, not only financially, but also for his customers. How? By lowering costs and by having the right product in the right place at the right time. Then the whole industry moved together with the UPC code as a standard. In a rather humorous note, in those days, the supermarkets would not install scanners until the supermarkets marked each and every item, and to them, a big cost for the food stores. And the suppliers would not mark the goods until the grocers installed the scanners. Now it seems like a bit of levity, but it was most true at the time. This story somewhat leads into my own personal experience with barcoding. In 1968, I did not know the difference between a barcode and bars in a jail. In the end, I did spend 40 years in this industry, having started in 1968 while working for the NCR Corporation and ending in my own consulting business in 2008. Although I did not realize it at the time, fate played an ironic twist and a foundation was established that would serve the balance of my business career. My initial task was to define the system requirements for NCR's proprietary color barcode system that was ultimately released in 1972 as part of the worldwide launch of electronic point-of-sale registers that changed the retail world and every one of our lives. Note that the final design included green, black, and white bars versus the original containing green, red, and white bars. This was a transitional coding scheme. I had to perform extensive research for what was to become one of the world's first department store platforms for the combination of electronic point of sale and automatic data collection systems. Although quite interesting, working extensively behind the scenes in a receiving and marking area was challenging. However, it was necessary as much was to be learned in terms of defining an automatic data collection system that NCR was in process of being developed. One might ask, why the receiving and marking area? Quite fundamental. To this day, any successful implementation of a system that incorporates barcoding must depend on the timely and accurate marking of the part of items at some point in the supply chain. In today's environment, much of this is done at the manufacturing level with great cooperation on the part of suppliers. In those days, manufacturers knew nothing of this technology, and once they did, wanted no part of additional cost of this technology of labeling merchandise with barcodes. Some retailers even demanded that they mark the merchandise, and if they failed, major dollar penalties were applied. Needless to say, times have changed. Now the suppliers are willing partners as they have also become substantial beneficiaries of the technology. In the meantime, it was necessary to properly define how a barcode was going to be printed and then attached to multiple types and shapes of merchandise. Then came the challenge of what to do with the information once it was automatically captured at the point of sale. In those early days, computerized retail inventory control systems were virtually non-existent, certainly not in the terms that we understand in modern times. Once the initial research task was done, my primary activity involved marketing. I clearly remember those days starting in 1972, traveling throughout the United States and Canada, trying to convince retail executives that color barcode was the greatest thing since sliced bread. However, in those days, no standards existed. Thus, every company was trying to convince customers that they had invented the best mousetrap. The technology was a solution looking for a problem. Little progress was being made. But then something happened that was the prelude to the unbelievable growth that this industry has enjoyed. In 1973, the Uniform Code Council in Dayton, Ohio, adopted the UPC code as a standard for the food industry. In 1981, the Department of Defense adopted alphanumeric code 39 as a standard for all military shipments. In 1983, the U.S. Automotive Industry Action Group stated that code 39 would be the standard for all of its suppliers and manufacturers. It was at this time that the foundation was built for the major expansion of the barcode industry. No longer was one manufacturer competing with others with their own proprietary codes. Now, they were all competing on the basis of individual products like scanners, printers, verifies, etc. Many different technologies were surfacing for the end user. Primary scanners were wands, but soon to be overtaken by lasers, both fixed, like we see in the supermarkets, and handheld. Printer technology included dot matrix, which quickly died for this application, impact, laser, thermal, and inkjet. The industry was somewhat harmonized, but at least everyone was pulling in the same direction. Thus, in 1982, the very first Scantech was held in Dallas, Texas. 55 manufacturers literally used tabletops to display their products. Can you imagine seeing tabletops today? The first European Scantech was held in Amsterdam in 1984. I was so fortunate to attend all of them in the US and quite a few in Europe. Upon leaving this industry in 2008, large halls with fancy professional displays, along with professional presentations, were the venue for this annual event. In addition, another large trade show called ID Expo started up. One of the many experiences came the joy of meeting and making good personal friends, which exists to this day. Yes, we were competitors, but also aligned to improve the welfare of many end users. I have many fond memories of events and people like Brian Marcel as a result of these experiences. In those days, many small auto ID companies, along with a few small divisions of larger companies, competed for the big prize. In order. Never heard such a thing. In order. Other very important contributions to our industry were made by publications. Scan Newsletter was first published in 1977 by George Goldberg, who was a dear friend. Barcode News started printing in 1981. ID System Magazine was another. Automatic ID News printed their first edition in 1985. I work with many of their staff, including John Burnell, who is now president of the AIDC 100. I happily contributed quite a few articles to all four, as well as many more. Over the years, things have changed dramatically. Most of the smaller suppliers have either gone out of business or have been merged into large corporations. Starting in the late 80s and early 90s, major consolidations took place. Here are some highlights of just some of the mergers. Honeywell, they absorbed Welsh Allyn, Metrologic, Handheld Products, LXE, and Intermec. Motorola added Symbol Technologies, Telzon, and TechLogix. AT&T bought NCR, and 2 years later, spun them off on their own again. Datalogic bought Photographic Sciences, Spectrophysics, and Accusort. I would like to extend credit to my distinguished friend and colleague, the deceased Paul Berger, who was an industry giant and worked tirelessly to create a great consolidation story of our industry. Still wearing their own clothes is Zebra. They were incorporated in 1969 as Data Specialties, who was a manufacturer of high-speed electromechanical products. In 1982, they changed their focus to specially on-demand labeling and ticketing systems. Then in 1986, they became Zebra Technologies Corporation. To give you an idea of the growth rate of Zebra, in 1990, their annual sales were $30 million. Today's sales exceed $4 billion with more than 7,000 employees. Remarkable. Barcoding has had a positive impact on virtually every human in most countries of the world. We take it for granted and don't even smile when checking out in the supermarket as so much is happening so fast. But it speeds us through the checkout and helps the shelves stay replenished when we return for more purchases. People like companies like Amazon for granted, but they have no idea that this large and successful enterprise could not possibly exist without barcoding technologies. The medical community is another that is enjoying the benefits of barcoding by saving lives, and there are so many more. Let's back up in time. Remember in the late 60s and early 70s, I was part of the development team for NCR's color barcode symbology. Sometime around 1972 or 73, I invited Intermec to provide NCR with a relatively inexpensive printer to produce color barcode labels. Why? Because NCR designed one that cost over $10,000 to the end user. That in itself would kill market potential, as in those days, retailers typically spent in the hundreds for a label printer. So in relatively short order, Dr. David Allais and Dick Dilling of Intermec came to Dayton with a working model and at a much lower price. It appeared to work just fine, but that was my first introduction to the not invented here syndrome. Our engineers killed that possibility. Unfortunately, Mr. Dilling passed away quite some time ago, but he contributed so much in those adventurous days that an annual recognition award is given in his name. The Richard Dilling Award was established in 1984 and named for him as an industry pioneer and former vice president of AIM. The Dilling Award is the highest award given to an individual from the vendor community in the automatic identification and data capture industry. Zebra has been well represented. In 2013, your own Brian Marcel got this award. In addition, Clive Holberger received this honor in 2000. Last year, Zebra's Mark Wheeler received the Alan Gilligan Award, as did I in 2015. Time marches on. In February 1975, I made a major career decision and transferred to NCR's International Division. I felt like a sailor by traveling the world. To say the least, it was very exciting to open new doors. Within weeks of my arrival, I was on my way to South Africa. In the end, this job took me to nearly 50 countries. What an experience. In 1979, the group was reorganized and I ended up as marketing director for the Europe group. In late 1981, a friend of mine, Jack Householder, who is now treasurer of the AIDC 100, moved to NCR's engineering and manufacturing group in Lake Mary, Florida. In 1982, he hired me as a product manager for the barcode product line. In those days, NCR designed and manufactured industrial terminals, but made no barcode products. One of my tasks was to explore the OEM market for products we could buy and resell. The first successful venture was with Chet Benoit of Welsh Allen, and we did OEM their wands for a while. One of my favorite all-time stories occurred in October 1982. Chuck Ferdy of Symbol Technologies arrived to show and demonstrate the famous LS7000, which was a very successful product. This was the first 1-pound handheld helium neon laser scanner. Although a lot more expensive than a contact wand, it didn't take a crystal ball to predict the future of this technology. We all know the rest of that story. I was unable to hold back my excitement for this product. Chuck sent me a demo model, and I could not wait to demonstrate it to our engineers. The moment arrived. After reviewing all of the good aspects of the scanner, I had saved the best for last. Symbol said it could be dropped from 4 feet onto a concrete floor without being damaged. So as a climax to my presentation, I did just that. Guess what happened? It broke. As time would prove, in the end, it would not have made any difference. That old non-invented here syndrome really showed its ugly head for the next few years. Just have to add a note to the symbol story. In 1982, sales were nearly $3 million, and their net profit was a loss of nearly $1 million. Did that ever quickly change? And their stockholders were amply rewarded. Ironically, in 1988, the charter for my business unit was canceled. Here I am, I'm 56 years old and no job. What a dilemma. Having had the benefit of associating with so many of our industry leaders and serving on a number of standards committees like AIG, in fact, it was with much thought I decided to form a barcode consulting business called Delta Services, which survived until I retired in 2008. Delta's primary mission was to help companies and organizations establish internal standards and put on a lot of educational seminars. One of the things that evolved out of the 1982 to 88 experience was the creation of the 10 Commandments of barcoding, which I proudly presented all over the world, and it printed in many US and international publications. Some say it's still being used to this day. So that is kind of a history in review. But before ending, I would like to mention 2 other major organizations that have contributed mightily to the expansion of this industry. One is called AIM, which is the Association for Automatic Identification and Mobility. As an unbiased resource for networking, education, advocacy, and standards, AIM helps its members grow their business by fostering the effective use of automatic identification and data capture solutions. It was founded in 1971. Without this assemblage of the talent of this organization, the industry would never have achieved such heights. It networks with the industry's thought leaders in AIDC, IoT, RFID, track and trace and standards. It monitors asset tracking and data collection standards from development, public review, and publication. In May 1997, another organization was formed called the AIDC 100. AIDC stands for Automatic Identification and Data Collection. The intent was to recognize the top contributors to this industry. I was honored to be one of the 60 charter members of this group. We have a great website that I would encourage all of you to visit. It can be found at aidc100.org. Subsequently, the membership has been expanded to accommodate the dynamic growth of this industry. The AIDC 100 is a not-for-profit, self-sustaining, non-political, international organization of automatic identification and data capture professionals and others who have significantly contributed to the growth and advancement of the industry. We are honored to have representation from many parts of the world, including Europe, the Far East, and the Americas, both North and South. It gave me great opportunity to rub elbows with the best of the best. A great example is Brian Marcel, who is a distinguished member and now served as a member of the AIDC 100 Leadership Council. During this presentation, I have mentioned a few people and my friends who have done so much for me, and more importantly, the industry. I wish I could mention all of them, but at the risk of missing some, I have kept this to a minimum. I would like to quote an original saying by Alfred Tennyson. We are part of who we have met. And so, to an industry that I served for a very, very long time, I thank you and concluded by saying you are all a part of me. I've done so much, gone to so many worldly places, and have met and worked with so many wonderful people. How could anyone be more fortunate? I will always be deeply grateful to the automatic identification industry for these rewards. So Brian, thank you again for making Dick Meyers a small part of this meeting today. And the best of wishes to every one of you. May your futures be as bright as mine has been. Thank you.